Sarah Mitchell woke up every morning at 5:30. The old wooden floors of her grandmother's farmhouse creaked under her feet as she walked to the kitchen. She made her coffee black and strong, just like her grandmother used to make it. Through the kitchen window, she could see the big red barn that had become her whole world. 7 years ago, Sarah had been a different person. She wore suits to work in a tall building in Denver. She had meetings and deadlines and a boss who never smiled. Every day felt the same. She made good money, but she felt empty inside. Then her grandmother died and left her the old farm in Montana. Most people would have sold the place right away. The house needed new paint. The barn was falling apart. Weeds grew everywhere. But Sarah saw something different. She saw a place where she could make a difference. She saw a place where broken horses could heal. Sarah quit her job and moved to Montana. Her friends thought she was crazy. Her mother cried for weeks. But Sarah knew she was doing the right thing. She had always loved horses. As a child, she spent every summer at her grandmother's farm, riding the old mare named Buttercup and learning how to care for animals. The first year was hard. Sarah had to learn everything from scratch. She fixed fences with her own hands. She painted the barn red because her grandmother always said red barns brought good luck. She learned about horse feed and veterinary care. She made mistakes, but she never gave up. Her first rescue horse was a thin brown mare named Luna. Someone had left Luna tied to a tree with no food or water. The sheriff brought her to Sarah because he heard she might take in unwanted horses. Luna was scared of everything. She would not let anyone touch her. Sarah spent hours sitting near Luna, talking softly and offering carrots. After 3 months, Luna finally let Sarah brush her coat. It was a small victory, but it felt like the best moment of Sarah's life. She knew then that she had found her purpose. Word spread quickly in the small town. People began bringing Sarah horses that needed help. There was an old stallion named Thunder who had been hurt in a trailer accident. A young pony named Patches whose owner could not afford to feed him anymore. Twin foals whose mother had died during birth. Sarah learned to bottle feed the babies. She learned to wrap injured legs. She learned to be patient with horses who had forgotten how to trust humans. Each horse taught her something new. Each success made her stronger. By her 3rd year, Sarah had 12 horses living in her barn. She had built new stalls with her own hands. She had learned to fix the old tractor that helped her move hay. She had painted the barn twice and fixed the roof 3 times. The horses were not just animals, too. Sarah, they were her family. She knew each horse's favorite treats. She knew which ones liked to be groomed and which ones preferred to be left alone. She knew their fears and their joys. Thunder, the old stallion, loved apples but hated carrots. Patches, the pony, was afraid of loud noises but loved children. Luna, her first rescue, had become the mother of the herd. She watched over the younger horses and kept them safe. Sarah's days started early and ended late. She fed the horses at sunrise and sunset. She cleaned stalls and filled water buckets. She walked each horse and checked for injuries. She ordered feed and medicine. She paid bills and worried about money. The rescue operation did not make much money. Sarah lived simply. She wore old jeans and work boots. She ate simple meals and drove an old truck. Every extra dollar went to the horses. Veterinary bills were expensive. Feed costs kept rising. But Sarah never complained. The local community began to notice Sarah's work. The veterinarian, Dr. Martinez, started giving her discounts. The feed store owner, Mr. Johnson, delivered hay for free. The sheriff brought her more rescue cases. Sarah started a small program for children with disabilities. She had read that horses could help kids who had trouble walking or talking. Every Saturday, 3 children came to the farm. They brushed the horses and learned to ride. Sarah watched their faces light up when they sat on horseback for the first time. 8-year-old Emma had been born with cerebral palsy. She could not walk without help. But when she rode Luna, she sat tall and proud. Her mother cried happy tears watching her daughter smile. So big. 10-year-old Marcus had autism and rarely spoke. But he loved Thunder, the old stallion. He would whisper secrets into Thunder's ear. The horse would stand perfectly still, as if he understood every word. These moments made all of Sarah's hard work worthwhile. She was not just saving horses. She was helping people too. The farm had become a place of healing for both animals and humans. Sarah's house was small but cozy. She had put her grandmother's quilts on the bed and her grandmother's dishes in the kitchen. Pictures of horses covered the walls. Books about animal care filled the shelves. At night, Sarah would sit on her front porch and watch the horses in the pasture. Luna would come to the fence and put her head over the rail. Sarah would stroke her neck and tell her about the day. The horse would listen like she understood every word. Sarah had no husband or children. She had no family nearby, but she was not lonely. The horses were her family. The farm was her home. The work was her passion. Sometimes old friends from Denver would visit. They would look around at the simple life Sarah had built and ask if she missed the city. They asked about her career and her retirement plan. They worried about her living alone on the farm. Sarah would smile and point to the horses. This was her career. This was her retirement plan. This was her life, and she loved every minute of it. The farm was not perfect. The barn needed a new roof. The truck made strange noises. The fences needed repair. But Sarah had built something beautiful. She had created a safe place for animals that nobody else wanted. Every morning when Sarah opened the barn door, 12 horses would whinny their greetings. They knew her footsteps. They knew her voice. They trusted her completely. Sarah had found her calling. She was exactly where she belonged. She was happy, fulfilled, and proud of what she had accomplished. The farm was her masterpiece, built with love, patience, and determination. She had no idea that everything was about to change. February in Montana was always cold, but this winter was worse than most. Snow covered the ground 3 feet deep. The wind howled through the bare trees every night. Sarah had to break ice on the water buckets twice a day. She went to bed early. That Tuesday night, exhausted from a long day of caring for the horses, Thunder, the old stallion, had been limping, and Sarah had spent hours soaking his foot in warm water. Luna had seemed restless all day, pacing in her stall. Sarah thought maybe the mare could sense the storm coming. The old farmhouse was warm and cozy. Sarah had made soup for dinner and read a book about horse training. She fell asleep listening to the wind outside and the familiar sounds of the horses settling in for the night. At 2 a.m, Sarah woke up to a strange sound. It was not the usual noise of horses moving in their stalls. It was different. Panicked, she heard loud whinnying and the sound of hooves kicking against wood. Sarah sat up in bed and looked toward the window. An orange glow was coming from the direction of the barn. At first, she thought someone had left a light on. Then she smelled smoke. Her heart stopped. Fire. Sarah jumped out of bed and ran outside in her pajamas and boots. The cold air hit her like a wall, but she barely noticed. The barn was on fire. Flames were shooting out of the windows on the south side. The horses were screaming. She ran to the barn door and pulled it open. Smoke poured out, thick and black. The heat hit her face like a furnace. She could barely see through the smoke, but she could hear the horses. They were terrified. Sarah grabbed a flashlight from the shelf by the door and went into the burning barn. The smoke burned her eyes and lungs. She could barely breathe. But she had to save her horses. The first stall held Patches, the little pony. Sarah opened the door and tried to lead him out, but he was too scared to move. She pushed him from behind, and finally he ran toward the door. She followed him out and made sure he was safe before going back inside. The smoke was getting thicker. Sarah could barely see where she was going. She felt her way along the wall to the next stall. Luna was inside, whinnying loudly. Amore was smart and calm. When Sarah opened the door, Luna followed her straight outside. Back inside, Sarah found Marcus, the young horse that loved children. He was bleeding from a cut on his leg, but he was alive. She let him out quickly and went back for more. The fire was spreading fast. The old wooden barn was like kindling. Sarah could hear the roof creaking above her head. She knew she did not have much time. She saved Thunder next. The old stallion was calm even in the chaos. He seemed to understand that. Sarah was trying to help him. He followed her out of the barn and stood quietly in the snow. Sarah went back inside again and again. She saved Beauty, the young Mara with the white star on her forehead. She saved Star and Moonbeam, the twin foals. She saved Charlie, the old gelding who loved apples. By the time she had saved 8 horses, the fire was too strong. The roof was starting to collapse. Sarah tried to go back inside for the others, but the heat pushed her back. She could not get to the 4 horses in the back stalls. She heard sirens in the distance. Someone had called the fire department, but Sarah knew it was too late. The barn was completely on fire now. The flames reached up to the sky like angry fingers. Sarah stood in the snow, watching her life's work burn. The 8 horses she had saved stood behind her, shivering in the cold. She could still hear the 4 horses trapped inside, but there was nothing she could do. The fire department arrived 20 minutes later. They poured water on the flames, but the barn was already lost. The firefighters tried to save the house, and they succeeded. But the barn was gone. Sarah watched in shock as her beautiful red barn collapsed. The roof fell in with a loud crash. Sparks flew everywhere. The horses in the pasture whinnied and ran in circles. Chief Williams, the fire chief, came over to Sarah. He was a kind man who had daughters of his own. "I'm sorry," he said. "We got here as fast as we could." Sarah nodded but could not speak. She was shivering from cold and shock. Someone brought her a blanket and a cup of coffee. She drank it without tasting it. The fire burned all night. Sarah sat in her truck with the heater running, watching the flames. The 8 horses she had saved stood in the pasture, still scared and confused. They had nowhere to go. When the sun came up, Sarah could see the damage clearly. The barn was completely gone. Only the concrete foundation remained. The fire had also destroyed the feed room, the tack room, and the small office where Sarah kept her records. All the hay was gone. The feed was gone. The medicine was gone. The blankets and saddles were gone. 7 years of work had disappeared in one night. But worse than losing the building was losing the 4 horses. Sarah had failed them. She had not been fast enough, or brave enough to save them all. The guilt was crushing. Dr. Martinez, the veterinarian, arrived as the sun was coming up. He checked the 8 surviving horses for injuries. Most of them were fine, just scared, but 2 had small cuts from running through the smoke and debris. "You did good, Sarah," Dr. Martinez said. "You saved 8 lives. That's a miracle." But Sarah did not feel like a hero. She felt like a failure. She had lost 4 horses and everything she had worked for. The surviving horses needed shelter, food, and care. She had no money to rebuild. Her insurance policy was small and would not cover everything. The neighbors started arriving as the news spread. Mrs. Peterson from down the road brought hot coffee and sandwiches. Mr. Johnson from the feed store came to see if he could help. The sheriff arrived to investigate what had caused the fire. "Looks like it started in the electrical system," the sheriff said. "Old wiring. It happens in these old barns." Sarah knew the wiring was old, but she had not had money to replace it. She had planned to fix it this spring when she had saved enough money. Now, it was too late. The local newspaper reporter came to take pictures and ask questions. Sarah did not want to talk to him. She did not want the whole town to know about her failure. By noon, Sarah had to make a decision. The 8 horses could not stay in the open pasture. They needed shelter and food. She did not have either. She would have to find new homes for them. The thought of giving up her horses broke Sarah's heart, but she had no choice. She had failed them once by not keeping them safe. She would not fail them again by keeping them in poor conditions. Sarah spent the afternoon calling horse rescues in other towns. Most of them were full. The few that had space wanted money she did not have. She was running out of options. As the sun was setting, Sarah sat on her porch steps and looked at the burned foundation where her barn used to stand. The 8 horses stood in the pasture looking lost and cold. She had lost everything. Her business, her purpose, her dream. Tomorrow she would have to start making calls to find homes for her horses. Then she would have to figure out what to do with the rest of her life. Sarah had never felt so alone and defeated. The farm that had been her sanctuary was now a reminder of her failure. The horses that had been her family would soon be gone. She did not know that help was already on the way. Jake Harrison had been awake since 4 in the morning as usual. He was checking on his cattle when he saw the orange glow in the distance. He knew immediately that something was wrong. The light was coming from the direction of the Mitchell place. Jake had lived on his family's ranch his whole life. He was 40 years old and had never lived anywhere else. His father had built the ranch from nothing, and Jake had inherited it when his father died 5 years ago. The ranch was successful, with 500 head of cattle and good grazing land, but Jake was lonely. His wife, Mary, had died 3 years ago from cancer. They had been married for 15 years and had no children. Since Mary's death, Jake had lived alone in the big ranch house, going through the motions of life but not really living. Jake had watched Sarah Mitchell from afar for years. He had seen her working with the rescue horses and admired her dedication. He had wanted to talk to her many times, but he was shy and never knew what to say. Mary had always been the one who talked to neighbors and made friends. When Jake saw the fire, he did not hesitate. He hitched up his horse trailer and drove toward the Mitchell place as fast as he could. The roads were icy, but Jake knew them well. He had been driving these roads since he was 16. By the time Jake arrived, the fire was almost out. He could see Sarah sitting in her truck, wrapped in a blanket. The 8 horses stood in the pasture, shivering and scared. Jake's heart broke for them. Jake parked his truck and trailer, but did not approach Sarah right away. He could see she was in shock. The firefighters were packing up their equipment. The barn was nothing but smoking ruins. Jake went to his truck and pulled out a thermos of coffee. He had made it strong, the way ranch hands liked it. He walked over to Sarah's truck and knocked on the window. "Miss Mitchell?" he said quietly. "I'm Jake Harrison from the Double H Ranch. I brought some coffee." Sarah looked up at him with red, tired eyes. She had heard of Jake Harrison but had never really talked to him. She knew he was a successful rancher who kept to himself. "Thank you," she said, taking the thermos with shaking hands. Jake looked at the horses in the pasture. They were beautiful animals, but they looked cold and scared. "Those horses need shelter," he said. Sarah nodded. "I'm trying to find places for them. I can't keep them like this." Jake was quiet for a moment. He made a decision that would change both their lives. "I can take them," he said. "I have plenty of pasture and an old barn I don't use, just until you figure things out." Sarah stared at him. "I can't pay you," she said. Jake shrugged. "Neighbors help neighbors," he said. "That's how it works out here." Without waiting for Sarah to argue, Jake started loading the horses into his trailer. He was gentle and calm with them. Luna, the brown mare, seemed to trust him immediately. The other horses followed her lead. It took 3 trips to move all 8 horses to Jake's ranch. Sarah followed him in her truck, amazed by his kindness. She had expected to spend the day making painful phone calls. Instead, this quiet rancher had solved her biggest problem without asking for anything in return. Jake's ranch was impressive. The house was large and well kept. The barns were solid and modern. The pastures were green despite the winter weather. Jake had clearly worked hard to maintain his family's legacy. Jake showed Sarah where he had put the horses. The old barn was perfect for them. It had clean stalls and good ventilation. The horses were already eating hay and drinking water. They looked more relaxed than they had all day. "This is too much," Sarah said. "I can't accept this." Jake looked at her seriously. "Miss Mitchell, you saved 8 horses last night. You risked your life for them. The least I can do is give them a place to stay." Sarah felt tears coming to her eyes. She had been holding them back all day, but Jake's kindness broke through her walls. "Call me Sarah," she said. "Sarah," Jake said, and smiled for the first time. "I'm Jake." Over the next few days, Jake proved himself to be a man of his word. He arrived at Sarah's burned farm every morning at 7. He helped her sort through the ruins, looking for anything that could be saved. He brought tools and work gloves. He never complained about the dirty, sad work. Sarah found herself looking forward to Jake's visits. He was quiet, but when he did talk, he was thoughtful and kind. He had a dry sense of humor that made her smile even in her darkest moments. Jake told Sarah about his cattle ranch. He had learned the business from his father and grandfather. He loved the land and the animals. He worked hard but was successful. He employed 3 ranch hands and treated them like family. Sarah told Jake about her rescue work. She explained how she had left her corporate job to follow her dream. She talked about each horse and their stories. Jake listened carefully and asked good questions. As the weeks passed, Sarah and Jake developed a routine. They would check on the horses together every morning. Then they would work on cleaning up the burned barn site. Jake brought lunch, and they would eat together in comfortable silence. Jake was different from any man Sarah had known. He was steady and reliable. He did not make promises he could not keep. He was generous without expecting anything in return. He was strong but gentle. Sarah began to notice things about Jake, the way he was patient with scared horses, the way he always held doors open for her, the way he remembered little things she had mentioned days before. One evening, Jake invited Sarah to his house for dinner. He had cooked steaks on the grill and made baked potatoes. The food was simple but good. They sat at his kitchen table and talked for hours. Jake told Sarah about his wife, Mary. He had loved her since high school. Her death had left him empty and lost. He had been going through the motions of life, but not really living. I stopped believing in happiness, Jake said. I thought that part of my life was over, Sarah understood. She had felt that way too, in different circumstances. The loss of her barn had made her question everything she believed about herself and her future. As winter turned to spring, Sarah and Jake grew closer. They worked together every day. They shared meals and conversations. They laughed together and planned together. Sarah realized that Jake was not just helping her horses. He was helping her heal. His quiet strength made her feel safe. His kindness made her feel valued. His presence made her feel less alone. Jake was changing too. Sarah's passion for her work inspired him. Her courage in the face of loss impressed him. Her smile made him remember what it felt like to be alive. One day, Sarah found Jake in the pasture with Luna. The Murray was nuzzling his shoulder while he stroked her neck. Sarah watched them together and felt something shift in her heart. She likes you, Sarah said, walking over to them. Jake looked at Sarah with an expression she had never seen before. I like her too, he said. I like all of them. I like taking care of them. Sarah realized that Jake was not just talking about the horses. He was talking about her too. That night, Sarah lay in her bed thinking about Jake. She had been so focused on her horses and her work that she had never thought about love. But Jake had shown her that some things were worth more than any barn or business. Jake was thinking about Sarah too. He was lying in his empty house, wondering if he had the courage to tell her how he felt. He had been alone for so long that he had forgotten how to hope. Both of them were about to discover that sometimes the best things in life come from the worst situations. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what really matters. Sarah had come to Jake's ranch expecting temporary help. She was about to receive something much more valuable. She was about to receive a chance at a new life, a new love, and a new beginning. Jake had offered his help expecting nothing in return. He was about to discover that the best gifts are the ones you give freely without expecting anything back. The spring air was full of possibilities. The horses were healthy and happy. The friendship between Sarah and Jake was growing stronger every day. Neither of them knew that everything was about to change again. 6 weeks had passed since the fire. Sarah had been staying in the small guest room above Jake's barn office. It was meant to be temporary, just until she could figure out what to do next. But every day that passed made it harder to think about. Leaving, the horses were doing well on Jake's ranch. Luna had become the leader of the small herd, just as she had been at Sarah's place. Thunder, the old stallion, had bonded with Jake's cattle and often stood near the fence watching them. The younger horses played in the green pastures, Healthy and happy. Sarah had been making phone calls to horse rescues in other states. She had found places for all 8 horses, but they were far away. She would have to transport them hundreds of miles. The thought of scattering her horses across the country broke her heart. Jake had been quietly paying for everything. The hay, the veterinary bills, the feed. When Sarah tried to talk to him about money, he would change the subject. He acted like it was no big deal, but Sarah knew he was spending thousands of dollars on her horses. Sarah had also been looking for jobs. She had sent her resume to several companies in Denver. Her old boss had called and offered her a position. The salary was good, better than what she had been making before. She could start as soon as she wanted, but the thought of going back to Denver made Sarah feel sick. She had been happy in her old life, working with her horses and helping children. The idea of sitting in meetings and staring at a computer screen all day seemed impossible. Now, Jake had been acting strange for the past week. He was quieter than usual, which was saying something. He would start to say something and then stop. He would look at Sarah with an expression she could not read. Sarah was packing her few belongings on a Thursday evening. She planned to leave for Denver on Saturday. She had called her old boss and accepted the job. She had arranged for the horses to be picked up by their new owners over the next 2 weeks. Jake knocked on her door at 8 o'clock that night. Sarah was surprised to see him. He usually went to bed early and got up before dawn. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. Sarah nodded and invited him in. Jake sat on the small couch and looked at his hands. He was nervous, which was unusual for him. "I heard you're leaving on Saturday," he said. "Yes," Sarah said. "I got a job in Denver. It's a good opportunity." Jake was quiet for a long moment. Sarah could see he was struggling with something. "I have a proposal," he said finally. "A business proposal?" Sarah sat down across from him. "What kind of business proposal?" Jake looked up at her with serious eyes. "I want to turn part of my ranch into a horse rescue." "A permanent one? I want you to run it." Sarah stared at him. "Jake, that's very generous, but I can't pay you anything. I lost everything in the fire." Jake shook his head. "I don't want you to pay me. I want you to be my partner." "Equal partners? We would own it together." Sarah was confused. "But why? You have a successful cattle ranch. Why would you want to get into horse rescue?" Jake stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the pasture where the horses were grazing in the moonlight. "Because these past 6 weeks have been the best weeks I've had in 3 years," he said. "Since Mary died, I've been just existing, getting up, doing the work, going to bed. I wasn't living," he turned back to Sarah, "but working with you and the horses has made me feel alive again. I want to do something meaningful with my life. I want to help animals the way you do." Sarah felt tears coming to her eyes. "Jake, I don't know what to say." Jake sat back down, closer to her this time. "There's more," he said. "I don't just want to be your business partner." Sarah's heart started beating faster. She had hoped Jake felt the same way she did, but she had been afraid to believe it. "I want to be your life partner too," Jake said. "I want to marry you, Sarah," Sarah gasped. She had not expected this. "Jake, we've only known each other for 6 weeks." Jake smiled. "I've been watching you from afar for years. I've seen how you care for your horses. I've seen how you help those children. I've seen your strength and your kindness. These past 6 weeks have just confirmed what I already knew." Sarah felt like she could not breathe. "What did you already know?" Jake took her hands in his. "That I love you. That I want to spend my life with you. That I want to build something beautiful together." Sarah looked into Jake's eyes and saw complete honesty. This was not a man who said things he did not mean. This was not a man who made promises he could not keep. "But Jake, I lost everything. I don't have anything to offer you." Jake squeezed her hands. "You have everything I want. You have passion and courage and love. You have a dream that I want to be part of. You have a heart that I want to protect." Sarah felt the tears spilling down her cheeks. "I love you too, Jake. I've been falling in love with you these past weeks, but I was afraid to hope." Jake pulled her into his arms. "Then say yes to the ranch. Say yes to the partnership. Say yes to marrying me. Sarah pulled back and looked at him. Jake, are you sure? This is a big decision. You're talking about changing your whole life. Jake smiled. Sarah, my life changed the night I saw that fire. It changed when I decided to help you. It changed when I realized I was in love with you. I'm not asking you to change my life. I'm asking you to help me make it better. Sarah thought about everything Jake was offering. A chance to continue her rescue work. A chance to build something bigger and better than what she had lost. A chance to love and be loved by a good man. What about the cattle ranch? She asked. Jake shrugged. I'll keep running it. I have good ranch hands. But I want to dedicate part of my land and my time to the horse rescue. I want to do it with you. Sarah looked out the window at the horses. They were her family. The thought of keeping them together, of continuing to care for them, made her heart sing. What about the children's program? She asked. The therapeutic riding? Jake's eyes lit up. We could expand it. Make it bigger and better. Help more children. Maybe even get grants from the state. Sarah could see the vision forming in her mind. A beautiful ranch with facilities for both cattle and horses. A program that helped children with disabilities. A life shared with a man who understood her dreams. I need time to think, Sarah said. Jake nodded. Take all the time you need. But Sarah, don't go back to Denver just because it's safe. Don't give up on your dreams because you're afraid. That night, Sarah lay in bed thinking about Jake's proposal. It was everything she had ever wanted and more. But it was also scary. She had been hurt before. She had lost everything once. What if it happened again? But then she thought about Jake. He had shown her nothing but kindness and generosity. He had supported her when she was at her lowest point. He had asked for nothing. In return, Sarah thought about the horses. They were happy and healthy on Jake's ranch. They had room to run and graze. They had each other. Maybe this was where they belonged. She thought about the children she had worked with. Emma, who had learned to ride despite her cerebral palsy. Marcus, who had found his voice through working with horses. There were so many more children who could benefit from a program like theirs. Sarah thought about love. She had been alone for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to be loved, but Jake made her feel safe and valued. He made her feel like she was worth something. By morning, Sarah had made her decision. She found Jake in the barn, feeding the horses. He looked up when she came in, hope and fear in his eyes. Yes, Sarah said simply. Jake dropped the hay bale he was holding. Yes to what? Sarah smiled. Yes to everything. Yes to the ranch. Yes. To the partnership. Yes to marrying you. Jake crossed the barn in 3 long strides and lifted Sarah off her feet. He spun her around while Luna and the other horses watched with interest. When he set her down, Jake kissed her softly. I love you, Sarah Mitchell, he said. I love you too, Jake Harrison, Sarah replied. And I can't wait to become Sarah Harrison. Jake grinned. We're going to build something amazing together. Sarah looked around at the horses and the barn and the man who had saved her life in more ways than one. We already have, she said. Sarah and Jake were married on a beautiful spring morning in May. The ceremony was simple but perfect. They stood in the pasture where the horses grazed, surrounded by their closest friends and neighbors. Dr. Martinez was there, along with the sheriff and the fire chief who had responded to the barn fire. Mrs. Peterson and Mr. Johnson from the feed store came too. The horses were the guests of honor. Luna stood at the fence, watching the ceremony with intelligent eyes. Thunder stood beside her, as calm and dignified as always. The younger horses played in the background, their joy adding to the celebration. Sarah wore a simple white dress that she had bought in town. Jake wore his best suit, the one he had worn to church with Mary years ago. Sarah had told him it was okay to wear it. She understood that Mary would always be part of Jake's life, and she was not threatened by that. Pastor Williams from the local church performed the ceremony. He had known Jake since he was a boy and had watched Sarah build her horse rescue from nothing. He spoke about second chances and new beginnings. Love is not just about finding someone to share your life with, Pastor Williams said. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be better than you were before. Sarah and Jake exchanged simple gold bands. They had written their own vows, speaking from the heart about the love they had found in each other. "I promise to support your dreams," Sarah said to Jake. "I promise to work beside you to build something beautiful. I promise to love you and the life we will create together." Jake's voice was strong and clear. "I promise to protect you and care for you. I promise to be your partner in all things. I promise to love you and our horses and our life together." When they kissed, the horses whinnied their approval. Everyone laughed and clapped. Sarah and Jake were officially husband and wife. The reception was held in Jake's backyard. Tables were set up under the big oak tree that his grandfather had. Planted 50 years ago, Mrs. Peterson had made her famous apple pie. Other neighbors brought casseroles and salads. Jake had grilled steaks for everyone. After the wedding, Sarah and Jake got to work on their dream. They spent the summer building the Harrison Horse Rescue. Jake hired contractors to build a new barn, bigger and better than the one Sarah had lost. This barn had modern safety features, fireproof materials, and the best electrical system money could buy. The new barn had 20 stalls instead of 12. Each stall was spacious and comfortable. There was a medical room for treating injured horses, a feed room with proper storage, and an office where Sarah could keep records and meet with potential adopters. Jake also built a covered arena where horses could exercise in bad weather. He installed the best fencing money could buy, creating several pastures where horses could graze safely. Everything was designed with the horses' comfort and safety in mind. While the buildings were going up, Sarah and Jake worked on the legal aspects of their rescue. They registered as a nonprofit organization. They applied for grants from the state and federal government. They created a website and started advertising their services. The first new horse arrived in August. It was a young Mare named Star who had been abandoned by her owner. Star was thin and scared, but she responded well to Sarah's gentle care. Within a month, Star was healthy and ready for adoption. Word spread quickly about the Harrison Horse Rescue. People started calling from all over the state. Some wanted to surrender horses they could no longer care for. Others wanted to adopt horses that needed homes. Still, others wanted to volunteer their time or donate money. By fall, the rescue had 15 horses. Each one had a story. There was Rusty, an old gelding whose owner had died. There was Princess, a young filly who had been injured in a trailer accident. There was Storm, a stallion who had been mistreated by his previous owner. Sarah knew each horse's history and personality. She worked with them patiently, helping them learn to trust humans again. Some horses recovered quickly. Others took months of patient work. Sarah never gave up on any of them. Jake proved to be a natural with the horses. He had worked with cattle all his life, but horses were different. They required more patience and gentleness. Jake learned quickly, and soon he was as skilled as Sarah at handling the rescue horses. The therapeutic riding program was even more successful than Sarah had hoped. She started with 3 children, the same ones who had come to her old farm. Emma, the girl with cerebral palsy, was now riding independently. Marcus, the boy with autism, had started talking more after working with the horses. Word about the program spread to other families. Soon, Sarah had a waiting list of children who wanted to participate. She hired a certified therapeutic riding instructor to help her. They expanded the program to include adults with disabilities too. Jake built a special arena just for the therapeutic riding program. It had soft footing and high fences for safety. He also built a ramp so that people in wheelchairs could easily mount the horses. The rescue received its first major grant in October. The state awarded them $50,000 to expand their therapeutic riding program. Sarah cried when she read the letter. It was validation that their work was important and needed. Local businesses started supporting the rescue too. The feed store gave them discounts on hay and grain. The veterinary clinic provided services at reduced rates. The local newspaper wrote articles about their success. Sarah and Jake were featured on the front page of the county newspaper. The headline read, "From Ashes to Hope, Local Couple Builds Dream Horse Rescue." The article told their story from the fire that destroyed Sarah's barn to their wedding and the success of their new rescue. The first year was hard work, but rewarding. Sarah and Jake worked from dawn to dusk, 7 days a week. They cleaned stalls, fed horses, fixed fences, and did paperwork. They were tired all the time, but they were happy. In the evenings, they would sit on their front porch and watch the horses in the pasture. Luna, now the undisputed leader of the herd, would often come to the fence to greet them. Sarah would give her carrots and tell her about the day's events. "Do you ever miss your old life?" Jake asked Sarah one evening. Sarah looked at the horses and then at her husband. "Never," she said. "This is better than anything I ever imagined." Jake smiled. "Even though we work all the time and never have any money?" Sarah laughed. "We have everything we need. We have each other, we have the horses, and we have work that matters." By their first wedding anniversary, the Harrison Horse Rescue had saved 52 horses. 28 had been adopted into loving homes. 24 were still at the ranch, either recovering from injuries or waiting for the right family to adopt them. The therapeutic riding program was serving 15 children and 5 adults with disabilities. Sarah had been invited to speak at conferences about her work. Other rescue organizations were asking her for advice on starting their own programs. Jake's cattle operation was doing well too. He had hired additional help so he could spend more time with the horses. The ranch was more profitable than ever, and Jake was happier than he had been in years. On their anniversary, Jake surprised Sarah with a special gift. He had commissioned a local artist to make a bronze sculpture of Luna. The sculpture showed the Mare standing proud and strong, her head held high. "For the horse who brought us together," Jake said, when he presented the sculpture to Sarah. Sarah cried when she saw it. Luna had been her first rescue, the horse who had taught her that broken things could heal. Now Luna was the matriarch of their rescue herd, teaching other horses that they were safe and loved. The sculpture was installed in the main pasture, where all the horses could see it. Luna seemed to understand that it was meant to honor her. She would often stand near it, as if she was posing for visitors. Sarah and Jake started talking about expanding the rescue even more. They wanted to add a retirement program for old horses whose owners could no longer care for them. They wanted to start an education program for local schools. They wanted to rescue horses from slaughter auctions. "We could be the biggest horse rescue in the state," Sarah said excitedly. Jake smiled at his wife's enthusiasm. "We could be the best horse rescue in the state," he said. "Size isn't everything. Quality matters more." Sarah knew he was right. They were not just saving horses. They were changing lives. Every child who learned to ride despite their disability was a victory. Every horse who learned to trust again was a triumph. Every family who adopted a rescue horse was part of their extended family. As Sarah and Jake lay in bed on their anniversary night, they talked about their dreams for the future. They wanted to have children of their own someday. They wanted to expand the rescue. They wanted to help even more horses and people. "Do you think we'll look back on this as the best time of our lives?" Sarah asked. Jake pulled her closer. "I think every year will be better than the last," he said. "As long as we're together?" Sarah smiled in the darkness. She had lost everything in a barn fire 2 years ago. She had thought her life was over. But losing everything had led her to gain something much more valuable. She had gained a husband who loved her. She had gained a dream that was bigger than anything she had imagined alone. She had gained a purpose that would last a lifetime. Outside their bedroom window, the horses slept peacefully in their safe pastures. Luna stood watch over them just as she always did.